When I was a kid, at school we were playing the telefono. And somebody would start just making up a word like manzana, apple, and we would be just seated one next to the other, and this apple would be traveling. And fortunately, hopefully, the last one, the apple would just appear, okay? But when we did that game in English class, in la Academia de Inglés, we had a problem because we started with apple, and through the way, it transformed into a potato or even Madagascar. And why is it so? Basically, is when you have a group of people that have to sequentially cooperate and they do not share a strong common language, then apples become potatoes or Madagascar. And this is exactly what I've been seeing in the last, let's say, 6 or 7 years I've been working between academia and industry. The concepts, the main concepts that rule academia and what industrial people is expecting are completely different. And it is our duty to try from both sides to meet these two things. Today I want to share you two of them. Let's see how the time goes, but I want to share two of them with you. One of them is responsibility, and the second one is efficiency. We may think that we will agree, both sides, industry and academia, of what responsibility or what efficiency is. Let me show you that we are not even close. Think about the following. You work hard to submit a Nature Materials paper, as I did in Berkeley. The day that you get it accepted, there is a big party. You're done. It's very, very difficult that this paper comes back to your face, slaps you, and creates you a problem. This is just a +1, like YouTube views. It's very difficult to go back. As an industrial guy, the day that you deliver a product, that day starts somehow a torture. It's called a 2-year warranty. That thing has to work perfectly and smoothly for 2 full years. And believe me, your customers, the most important part of a company, will come back, will WhatsApp you at 11 p.m. and say, hey, this parking sensor is not working. Hey, this CO2 sensor is not transmitting. You see how difficult it is to compare this responsibility. I'm not saying that one is irresponsible and the other one is responsible. This is not a one-dimensional quantity. What I'm talking about is how different is responsibility seen. If you're a scientist, you think, I did my work well, I fulfill all the steps pretty much correctly, I'm done. I have been responsible. If you are an industrial guy, it's not enough that everything has been done according to the books. It has to work perfectly for 2 years. Believe me, I've seen many spin-offs fail because they thought, oh, we're done. This is our sensor. We've been to the Mobile World Congress. We've been to this and that and that. No. That day, if you sell something, starts 2 years of trial of that technology. The second thing I want to talk to you today is efficiency. When I was an academic, I used to write proposals, and you had a bunch of money. You know how bad it can be, because this is your budget. It cannot go too much away from this number. It's given to you, you complete your goals, and then what? You fill up a report saying, I did A, B, C, as I promised A, B, C. Maybe I promised C prime, and I get C. In my industrial experience, I don't go to a place usually where people give me money for free. What I believe where the grant system becomes the loan system or the investor program. Imagine that every time you start writing a paper, every time you need anything, you're losing part of it. It's called equity. Or imagine that after you complete successfully a project of 375,000 euros, and you get a medal and a special mention from your government saying you did fulfill all the objectives of the project and all these products are commercialized. You go pick up the medal, and the next day a bank calls you saying, hey, I won 375,000 euros back. I'm going to the efficiency concept. For me, in the industrial side, to have available €1 million, let's speak about standard ERC type of grants, by doing devices in which just to make the numbers easy, I make a profit of €1 per device. I need to sell 1 million devices. I need to have 1 million potential customers. Okay, one customer can buy 1,000 and I can make more margin. But you see where I'm going. Can you imagine selling and receiving the WhatsApps of all the complaints of 10,000 of the same identical thing? It's very, very difficult. So, when I was an academic, my project goals were like, only complete the project, don't overspend, don't underspend. Oh my God, underspending. Now my project goals is, hey, I have to put aside euro by euro to be able to pay the salary costs of people just doing research in a company. It's a totally different perception of efficiency. Believe me, you recycle more, you reuse more, you are much more creative because you are just forced to be almost perfect every day. If something doesn't work, you have to go there. And my salary is not included in the package. That day, 8 hours of non-production because I have to travel 400 kilometers, repair something, or just realize that something is not working because a third party was not doing their job. So, these two things, responsibility and efficiency, are completely opposite. How come can we expect that scientists who are not used to play risk become entrepreneurs? And how come we can expect entrepreneurs and innovators who are not used to be creative to create new things? It's just impossible. And many of our institutions are slowly driving us to a scenario of superheroes, of great gods, in which one guy has to have H-index 50, 25 Nature papers, 5 companies, and a profit of 5 million euros. That man just does not exist. My proposal is, let's break it into 2 parts. Everybody has to do what can do better. Let's have half of this building not needing to inflate introductions of flashy papers, of concluding in epic ways flashy papers, just gives us facts so that the innovators can get the facts, the good and the bad ones. Why the hell there are no mistakes almost in the scientific literature? Just go to Scopus, Google Scholar, search for erratum, search for amendments, scan through your colleagues. We are only telling good news to the innovators. How come all startups go wrong, mostly, if all the ingredients are perfect? So you see, I think in the next years we will see many research institutions struggling if we don't really rethink how we are operating. We really have to admit the errors. We really have to admit that 1 week you can start doing something, and this something can go completely wrong. And you have to report that as a scientist, and you have to get credit for that. It's not possible that the most important day of your lives, they only ask you about the happy ending, successfully published papers. All your mistakes doesn't count. We all do mistakes. We just hide them. And we belong to the public. We are publicly funded mostly. We should be able and credited for making mistakes. In the startup world, you will get a job if you crash the company. Hey, I'm here, right? So you have the experience of what went wrong, how the accounting could be improved, etc. Why these good things of these areas don't mix? We just want to create superheroes. And none of you, not myself, will become superheroes. The days have 24 hours. If you have any questions, we can continue this debate on the round table. I'm very happy to hear from you the origin of the creations. What do you think? How could we improve this connection with industrial partners? How people with €1 million in the pocket and willing to create things can pick good seeds for their creations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Xavi. If you want to do any comment or question to Xavi Martí.
You are not born a scientist and you are not born an entrepreneur. You're trained as scientist and you're trained an entrepreneur. So I think that we have to, I partially agree with what you're saying, that that you cannot do both things perfectly, but you can be trained to be in the gap. No, you also mentioned that gap, no, the potato and then the apple. So what kind? I mean, you can tell us what's your experience. I mean, how do you start a potato, become an apple? So how do you start a scientist? Because you started as a scientist, I understood, but now you're sort of like speaking from the other side. So what's the training? What do you see the value in a institution like us? What should we provide to our researchers so that they could be able to cross that gap? No.
Okay. Just first, let me just review. My life, I was extremely lucky because, you know, in these situations in which you couple with the right groups and you can guarantee the publication, so I could gamble on the other staff. I was also very lucky because when I jumped to the other side, a guy who was very understanding received me and made my transition very easy. Okay? What I now appreciate from scientists is the ability to go to sleep and solve a problem. Because you guys cannot sleep if you have something on the back of your minds. Most of the problems right now are either algorithmic from the computer science style or algorithmic from the materials or electronic side. We need blocks that answer specific questions to information flow or blocks that translate nature into information. I think centers like this one host the right people that have a lot of experience in translating photons or gas flow into ones and zeros. But they put all this effort in a canvas where publications and formalities don't highlight invoicing. And without invoicing, the company or the process cannot be closed. You will always be dependent. So from an industrial point of view, I see the value in you that I would love to send you a problem in a box. And I would love to receive a problem with a warranty. You see, because I'm betting my personal money on it. But I think there can be a middle point. There we can pack the questions and the answers and the warranties, like banks do with the bad credits, you know. On the other hand, I think that the ability to make yourself worth every hour you spend consulting. Sometimes as a scientist you just say, oh, it was easy. There is a problem in scientists to pretend that everything was elegant, nice, complex solution, and easy. I think this is something you have to try to avoid, because everything is extremely difficult. Making a sensor that reads anything from a smartphone is extremely complicated, and we should charge the world a lot more, I guess, than we are charging right now. When I was in the academia, everything was perfect. Counting cars, easy. Parking cars is super simple. It's just symmetry arguments. What the hell is symmetry? It's super complicated to understand symmetry arguments in the magnetic signals, right? So, but who is in the gap is the question. Who is in the gap? My vision is fundamental research, completely isolated, creating ideas, slightly driven into vectors of the major needs of Europe. There has to be a box of resident entrepreneurs here. There have to be grants, like a postdoc grant of 2 years, like the Ramon y Cajal, some grant of Inventors del TVO grant or something that resides here and tries to make the prototypes very fast. It's not a good plan to just, okay, I have a very good device idea, I'm going to hire a student from electronic engineering and he will pack it in a 3D printer. No, we really need to go to the scalability, and maybe we should buy injection machines to make molds of the things we want to do and present them to investors in packages of hundreds, not as the piece. So I really think we have to redesign this, because the gap doesn't have to be a gap, it has to be one more step. And it has to have its own funding. It cannot be just pure academia with superheroes and then the banks and the investors and the creators, manufacturers of technology. There has to be a funded gap. It cannot be called a gap. It has to be called a block, a step. Is that an answer to your question?
Not really.
Okay.
You did a very good answer. I was aiming more at if you could provide them, like young students, how could they train themselves to conquer that gap? Because that's a good opportunity. It's an open opportunity. So what are the qualities, the training that they would need? I'm trying to put this in the frame of the PhD program.
Okay,
institution.
I got you. So sorry for the long religious talk I did. Exercise for tonight. Each one of you are right now doing a PhD or developing a sensor in your postdocs. Squeeze your agenda. Squeeze your context. Family, friends, people you meet in the conferences. Try to make the first connection to somebody who can produce a prototype, which is something managed by a smartphone that explains your paper. This is the step 0. You have to be trained that as you write the paper, start thinking how you would transmit this paper. Okay? Why? It's not just because of scientific communication, which is very important. It's just because the investors, if they understand what you are doing, they can explain it to other investors while they play golf. If that becomes a matter of conversation, you have probability of success. If you are opaque and you don't practice communicating you by creating a smartphone that uses the sample you have here and creates a very simple app, this is the step 1. Are you doing it? I know we are doing it. But you see, each one of you tonight, find who in your circles, in your Facebook, is a little bit more in the entrepreneurial side. Which one of your friends or family is having a company or a contact with a 3D printer space, making space, etc. Google maker space, co-working spaces, things like that. Be prepared to talk in conference. Be active. I see many people in conferences going like this. You have to be very aggressive. Conference is a very expensive thing. It's a trip, it's the per diems. you have to be biting the people. You have to infect them with your poster has to be shining, glowing, right? I see many people that goes, puts a poster, looks at the bottom. Okay, it's a beer stop or whatever. I'm going. No, be convincing at the last slide. Try to Google TED Talks, for example. It's not that TED Talks are scientific talks. It's not that. But you need to have your small TED Talk, TED talks, about your topic, ready to engage somebody. Start tonight. Prepare your small TED Talk and find one person to ask the next. And come back to your supervisor saying, I want to do this. You see, I did a mistake, I corrected it. It's no problem to make mistakes and admit them.
I see a problem also of incentives in that scientists, we know what our currency is. Our currency is papers, and we know pretty well what we have to do to get those papers, and I can more or less guarantee that if you give me extra 1,000 euros, I will convert it into X number of papers. Likewise, the other side knows exactly what they want, which is money. The block in the middle that has to bridge, it's not clear to me what would be the incentives. Because a technological transfer unit, they are taking the high-risk step of bridging an idea into a product that might not happen, so there may not be any money at the end, and there certainly won't be any papers out of it because the paper has already been published. So what would create an incentive for people to go into this middle block that is very, very needed, but it's not clear what is the reward for someone going into it?
I would say that we can just go with money. I mean, this gap in the middle will have a base salary, like a basic income, not like a full professor salary, and they will get more as a function of what they license, sell, or produce. One thing that is very important, and I wish you could practice it more often, is that if you find somebody in a conference or in the street or in your life that needs you, don't do it for free. Just ask the admin guys, they will prepare an invoice. It goes like this. They write a quotation, they approve the quotation, you do the job, they print the invoice, they pay. Super simple. We don't need to reinvent the types of contracts. It works like this. If you think you cannot do an invoice, then you go to a notary with 1,000 euros, you found an SL company, and then you can generate invoices. Again, we don't need to reinvent the laws and regulations. We just need to be able to create limited liability companies. Sometimes it looks like, oh no, we have to make an agreement between this and this. Come on, the institute will be co-owner. That's all you want, co-ownership. You have control. And that unit has a confined risk. If it drops, it collapses only that unit. It doesn't collapse the entire institution, for example. And that guy will have the incentive of seeing his individual box growing. And of course, getting the benefits at the end of the year.
Thank you very much. Yes, you have a flight. So thank you for coming, for sharing with us these moments.